All right, welcome everybody. My name is Zach. I'm usually the host of these calls, but this call, Jim Holbeisen is kind of running it. So, Jim, anytime you're ready. If questions
Can
come
you
up
hear
on you guys, it's *6 if you're on a phone, or the little microphone button if you're on a smartphone or a computer. And yeah, uh,
So, Zach, can you hear me all right?
oh, you're with Chris. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, very good. I'm with Chris. So, if you're ready for me, I'll go ahead.
yeah, we're good to go. Let me know when you
Okay.
want that video, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, the situation is I'm with Chris Coles and I'm with David Armstrong. We're in the car. We're headed back to Deep River, Iowa, where Dave lives. We were in Glenwood, Minnesota today. We've lost a very good growers guy, and we were paying our respects. So we're on our way home, and we're going to have to drop David off first. So Dave's going to be one of my guests tonight. So that's going to work out very nicely. What we did this week is David has a representative from Wisconsin, Daniel Wolf, that has a contact that lives in Quinter, Kansas. And for those of you that want to look that up, just get the atlas out, look at I-70 at about 150 miles east of the Colorado border is where Quinter, Kansas is at. This gentleman is farming a certain amount of ground, and he works for a farmer out there also. And this is a dry land environment. David says they say it's kind of a desert environment. And last year, he said they dealt with about 10 inches of precipitation. So, again, you can kind of visualize what you're looking at. This gentleman is kind of interested in what we're talking about because of that very dry environment. They've been working with that kind of environment for the last couple seasons. They're normally dry, but they've been excessively dry the last couple years. And there's been some issues, in the ag community out there. And when he met Daniel, Daniel was talking about high calcium lime and trying to create an environment where the biological life could kind of assist you when you get into rather dry conditions, and working with symbiotic microbes that are feeding with the plant. And then they are feeding back to the plant to keep their sugar factory going. So we went to Quinter, Kansas to kind of look at the soil that he's got. Very interesting was what we found, a very, very good high calcium lime source, about 38% calcium, 0.4% magnesium. And they've got a fair amount of that accumulated, and nobody is working with it because, again, the establishment is looking at pH adjustment, and they're more interested in working with a dolomitic material to adjust pH. And so we walked the farm with this gentleman, looked at the high cal lime, and he wants to work with the product. He's got some product now, but the basis or the foundation of the soil, which we believe comes with calcium, that's one of the things that he really wants to look at. And he was talking about, using a pentrometer and how hard the soil got, and he was attributing all that to the dryness of the soil, which I believe is contributing to it. But we still think there are other issues. You look at the conventional soil test, and the CEC is calcium levels are about 50%. Magnesium is not too bad. It's in that 18, 19% range, but they have a fairly low pH, higher exchangeable hydrogen, pH down in the low fives. So it's kind of a interesting scenario with the soil test. So of course we got our shovel. We start digging around in there, and it's hard. He's attributing a lot of that to the dryness, which some of it could be, but we're of the opinion that we still have some changes or imbalances in the electrical activity of the soil. So we've kind of put a game plan together, told him what we thought. He's going to be doing, some work with our ideas. One thing that David brought up to him was that they've totally reverted to no-till because everybody says you've got to maintain moisture, and tillage is going to release moisture. And David is thinking that maybe we get some oxygen in there, that could help this situation. Now the problem we've got is they've had some moisture this fall, which is when the high cal should have been applied. That hasn't been done. So I'm a little concerned that if we run into another dry season, that we might not get the total activity out of the calcium. So we're just going to do some strip work with the idea that once we can get some decent moisture, maybe we can get this thing to head in a different direction than what they're working with right now. The farmer that he's working with or working for has struggled pretty dramatically with yields. And they're basically still following the establishment and their methodology, and then they're blaming the failure, totally on the weather, which again, I'm sure is contributing to that. But this gentleman that we're working with believes maybe we can do a little bit better. So again, this is going to be a very interesting experiment for us. These strip plots that we put in, we think are going to tell us a lot, and hopefully we'll learn something from that. So we basically, after we left western Kansas, we headed to western Missouri, and we're looking at an operation that is creating or making biochar. And again, this is something that we've talked about in the past. We have some people in the organization that are working with the biochar. These gentlemen, they're trying to figure out what they can do with the biochar. And so there's some literature that's coming out now in mainstream agriculture. In fact, there was just one this week that was published at a experiment station where they're talking about the use of a charcoal product or the biochar itself, and they're saying that some of the results that they're getting at this particular experiment station seem to be positive. There's a lot of unknowns about it, so we're just trying to learn as much as we can to see if this is something that can be helpful to growers, customers. If they see some things are happening, we're trying to figure out the source of the biochar and see the mainstream outside of agriculture is going to start looking at this thing, because the issue with biosolids and forever chemicals, PFAS, there's just recently been a couple articles in mainstream agriculture talking about farmers that have lost their farm to PFAS when they applied biosolids. We've had people in the organization years ago that worked with biosolids, but we were seeing some issues with feed that they were using these biosolids on. So we've been kind of slowing ourselves down with this a little bit. US EPA felt it was strictly a heavy metal regimen problem, which again, it could have a very significant contribution. But this PFAS or forever chemicals, which are just very complicated carbon products, guys. We talk about sugar and humates and fulvic acid, humic acid, which are just different versions of sugar. That's all the PFAS is. It's another version of carbon compounds that have been manipulated with certain chemicals, with the intervention of the human element to try to create things they want to use, plastic bottles, and other types of things like that. And what we're finding is a lot of this is getting into the biosolid chain. And see, that's one of the issues that uh, they're doing with this burning process, trying to eliminate these compounds or put them back into a form when you make the biochar that they will degrade in nature. And there's byproducts from that the biochar could supply sugar to the microbes, even a place that with their physical structure will give us oxygen so that the microbes can breathe better. So that was part of our trip, talk with these gentlemen. We have people that want to experiment with it to see if this thing has any validity. In some cases, it could give guys that have a lot of trees on their properties. It might be something that'll give them a byproduct that they can do something. We aren't saying yay or nay. We're just saying this is things that we're looking at that could help the whole growers family down the road. One thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about, there was an article here a week ago or 10 days ago where they're basically talking about the communication between the plants and the rhizosphere symbiotic microbes. And what they're commenting on is the actual interaction between them and how they talk back and forth. And the proposal in this particular paper, and the paper is very good at explaining the symbiotic relationship. That's something we've tried to do at our meetings, give exposure to our representatives and our customers. But this paper does a very nice job of explaining that symbiotic relationship and how it works. And the research that these people are doing basically is saying some of the seaweed products that people are working with are enhancing this actual communication structure. And what we found out about this is that we always felt it was some kind of exudate that was pushed out by the plant that the microbes interacted with, and vice versa. The microbes themselves would secrete exudate that maybe the plant would respond to. And we discovered this summer some research out of Singapore where those microbiologists are saying really it's a gaseous exchange. And again, that makes a lot more sense because diffusion through the soil would be, significantly better that way. So again, there's a lot to learn about this, and these interactions, between the microbes and the plants are turning out to be a very, very key issue to the success of the plant. Which leads us to the next article that just appeared. I found it on the Google search. Well, Google found me actually on this search last Saturday. I've been talking with Marty Whitsitt. He had some issues that we were debating, and this particular article came up. And the article is talking strictly about how important the addition of calcium is to soil. This research is originated at an experiment station for the University of Connecticut, and they published a scientific paper in Nature Communications using radioactive calcium and radioactive carbon to try to measure the retention of organic matter in soil. And these guys are contending that as you apply calcium to the soil, you're actually stimulating the proper microbes that feed the crop, but at the same time build the organic matter in the soil. And the retention of the carbon, they say, is significantly better once that calcium is added to the soil. The technical paper itself, and again, both the generic version of this, we will have that for guys that are interested in that. I know some of our reps have expressed interest in it. And then the technical paper that came from Nature's Communication, we hope to have that printed off for you also. Carla and I have interacted on that, and I don't know where Carla's at on that because I've been gone all week. But we will eventually get those publications. So if you guys are interested in looking at that, but tonight, in this particular article, there was a podcast where the gentleman that headed this research discusses what they have found about calcium. And it's really interesting when you listen to him or read the article. They say, that the knowledge about calcium and its physiochemical improvement of the soil has been well known, that the establishment is using it to adjust pH. But this knowledge about how the populations of the microbes change dramatically when that calcium is added to the soil is pretty interesting. And they had no idea. Now, they're talking about when you add the calcium to the soil, some of the bacteria that act like mycorrhizal fungi start to become very, very active. And they call it filamentous bacteria. And that's basically what you've got with mycorrhizal, is those filaments that reach out in the soil for water, nutrients, secrete sugar to give yourself soil tilth. They're saying that you're going to increase the amount of bacterium in your soil that's doing that also. So the prospects of how much improvement we get with calcium, and they say right in the paper that they feel this is the next step in agriculture. Is when you're putting on fertilizer, you better get some calcium in there also if you're going to get better utilization of the fertility products. And that is actually in the podcast itself. So what we want to do is we'll play the podcast. You guys that can see it, there's nothing really fancy. They show the actual guy as he's talking about it. But all the rest of you that are listening to the recording, you'll basically get the idea of what the paper is discussing. It's really a substantiation of what Victor Tegis was talking about 70 years ago. So we feel that's something that is going to be very helpful as far as discussing the growers program. So Zach, are you in a position now that you can go ahead and play that podcast? I'd like to get that out there for these guys if you could do that.
Yeah, I should be able to, Jim. Just give me a moment.
Yeah, Zach, he'll share that with you, and once he gets that going, I'm going to shut her down from my standpoint, and hopefully you guys will get a listen at it. And then we'll be able to work with, if guys want to hear it over again, they could get with Zach. He could help them with that. Once you get the paper, you basically can tie into it yourself and then go ahead and work with it. Are you ready to go there, Zach?
Yep. As long as you can see it.
Yeah, I see it.
All right. Let me know if it doesn't work. Let me know.
So we know that calcium impacts the way that organic matter is stabilized in the soil by mediating chemical and physical interactions. What we didn't know and wanted to test out was whether calcium had an effect on what microbes were acting and how they were acting. We showed that by adding calcium to the soil, we are changing the community of microbes in the soil and changing the way they are processing the organic matter. And now they have processed it in a more efficient manner, and less carbon was lost and more carbon was retained in the soil. And this was something that previously was not known that calcium can do to soils. So now that we have a better understanding of how calcium can impact how microbes improve soil carbon, we can perhaps use soil amendments that have calcium and are already being used in soil, such as slime, gypsum, and others, in a way that can benefit soil organic matter.
Very good, Zach. Nice job. Turned
No
out very,
problem.
very nicely. One thing, guys, while we were playing that, I got a text from Miss Carla, and she said she has printed both the technical paper and the short paper. So you guys that are interested in having a copy of either of those, I can tell you the scientific paper is, it's a little harder to wade through, and the short version, they've shortened it up and have hit the high points and have hit the key points. But again, you're more than welcome to look at the technical paper. It's really what you look at in the technical publications, no matter if you're in agriculture or if you're in medicine, other engineering publications, they follow with an abstract, and then they talk about the methods and materials and the results they get, and then the conclusions that they make with it. And he pretty well summed that up very nicely in that short video. And if you get the short paper version, that you should be able to search YouTube and find that particular podcast if you want to get another listen to it, so that it's a little more understandable, a little more clear to you. But we will definitely, as far as an organization is concerned, guys, we're going to be trying to interact with this gentleman and see, what the issue is. He is saying that they had no knowledge about what calcium would do biologically. And see, for me personally, this is a big question I have with Victor Tegens. When he was figuring this out and talking about the utilization of calcium, a lot of it was chemical discussion. There wasn't much biological going on at that time, again, because what you're looking at is the track record now with human medicine that's really changed this knowledge of biological life and how it functions, in both soil and the human gut. So I think this is going to be a new frontier for us. And with this carbon credit thing and trying to figure out how to trap more carbon, and if this gentleman's research does take hold within the industry, I could envision there'll be a day when they're going to be looking at tests for calcium in your soil, and that's going to be part of the carbon credit thing that might increase the price of what you're selling. See, right now they're talking about when you haul to an ethanol plant, if this ethanol plant is furnishing sustainable aviation fuel, their tax credits are going to be very, very significant. But they have to prove that the people that they're buying the ethanol from have a track record with a carbon footprint that's low enough. And see, will this be part of that? Maybe it could be. Right now, we believe just cutting the nitrogen back, because if you look at the carbon credit literature that they're publishing on calculating how much carbon you're trapping or using, nitrogen is a big number in there. So the fact that a lot of you guys have learned how to put the calcium on and cut your nitrogen application, that's going to be very advantageous. So we got to move on. This is a subject that we will be pursuing in the future, guys. So the calendar picture is of March is what we want to look at. And the history on this, guys, is we had a customer that was doing what a lot of guys do. They're putting growers in furrow, and then they had created, or they had a 2x2 position where they were putting 28, 30, or 32. And the farmer, as he got a little bit older, he just said, I'm done screwing around with two separate systems. I'm only going to put in one system. And I said, well, what are you going to do? You're going to just shut down the 2x2? And he said, no, I'm going to use it. I'm just going to put growers there also. And so he started doing that. And seemed to get some fairly decent results with it. He was pretty happy, and this kind of bled back to Matt Gooding. Of course, Matthew, he was kind of interested in that, got to tinkering with it, and that's where he started dragging Zach Omer into this situation at that point. And so they wanted to get some hard numbers and see what kind of yields we were talking about. Did we have to increase it at the in-furrow and back down our nitrogen, or could we actually just get rid of the nitrogen and put the growers in both positions and get success with it? The industry has been talking about this. Barry, if you read some of his corn college literature, talking about this step-up method, they knew the 2x2 wasn't good enough to really work in a wet, cold environment. So they've been encouraging guys to do something in furrow, but be careful about that salt. And then go ahead and put your bigger blast of fertilizer in the 2x2 position. And that seemed to get things working better because you got that nutrition in there a little bit quicker. Or if your microbes are slowed down, you might get some activity out of that. So we felt that maybe that's something we should be looking at. So Matt was talking with Zach and kind of encouraged Zach. And if you're on there, Zach, I don't have my phone. I'm working through Chris's, so I don't know if you're out there. But if you are, if you unmute yourself and jump in here, Zach, he told me, he just texted me a little while ago saying that they've had some pretty violent weather down there, and he had some pictures he wanted for Zach Smith, and basically lost his internet connection, but he said he's still got cell phone coverage. So I just want Zach to kind of jump in now and tell you guys what he did. We published his work in the Solution, and it was kind of positive. So are you there, Zach?
Yes, sir, Jim. I'm here.
Hey, good to hear you, partner. Yeah. Good to hear you. So why don't you just go ahead and, I don't know if Gooding browbeat you into this or how that happened, and then just kind of tell us what turned up when you worked with it.
All right. Well, much like everybody else, you're always trying to figure out how to maximize your return on investment and spend less at the co-op. I'm not completely against it, but let's see what we can do to maximize stuff. And we had years where we had discussed splitting up the growers and mixing it with water and putting it in multiple places. Again, we keep talking about biology, so if we can spread the growers out in different places, because we feel that will influence the biology more than trying to put on nitrogen. So I started messing around with the corn planter because I like playing with things mechanical, and started changing that around. And for a couple years I did it, and I don't have a yield monitor in the combine, so I have to find a weigh buggy somewhere to do any of my test plot stuff. And for a couple years I wasn't able to do that very well. Co-op buggy just didn't work or wasn't available, whatever. So finally one year I got real serious about it after spreading some calcium and such, and after Matt getting on me to do a little better job of it. So I finally got 3 years worth of data where we did stuff a little different. The interesting thing from all 3 years is that I used the same 104-day conventional non-GMO hybrid all 3 years, and it was 3 different fields. All of them have different amounts of calcium that's been applied. But what I have found over all 3 years is that I used my 2x2 position and used to put in 8 gallon of 28%. And I put 7 gallon of Growers Mineral Solutions in the furrow. So the last 3 years I've used that as a check instead of planting the whole farm using it that way. I actually switched the farm over to putting the growers in both places and got rid of using the 28 in with the planter. So what I end up doing, because I have two separate systems, I have one for in furrow and one is the 2x2. And every now and then I'll goof with other products in the 2x2, but I generally don't do much with the in furrow. So to keep my rates the same, I end up with 3.5 gallon of growers, 3.5 gallon of water in the furrow. That gets me the 7 gallon application rate that my system is always set up for. My 2x2 is set up for 8 gallon an acre, so it's always getting 4.5 gallon of water, and it's usually either rainwater or RO water, and then it's getting the 3.5 gallons of growers. So the work that most people have seen is the first stuff we published that I come up with in 2021. That year was a good year for me. I really liked that. And I had some of the best yields that the farm had seen at that particular time. That year, splitting up the growers in the two positions, I actually gained 11.51 bushel per acre according to that test plot. Interesting to note that when I took that 8 gallon of 28 away from the planter, I didn't replace it anywhere. My side dress has always stayed the same, 33 to 34 gallon of 28 knifed in between the rows with the applicator. In 2021, that 8 gallon of 28 that I did not use only cost me $8.16 an acre. So not only did I get a few more bushels, I spent $8 less an acre. In 2022, I didn't really publish this data because it was pretty wild. A lot of people would probably really question it, but when you sit here and you look at my numbers from that, they're undeniable to me. In 2022, that particular field, I averaged 30 bushel an acre better where I split up the growers in the two positions and did not put any 28 on with the corn planter that year. In 2022, my 28% was $3.15 a gallon. So not only did I gain bushels, I saved $25.20 an acre on the average from that test plot. 2023, this year, this particular field got 30 ton of high cal chisel plowed in last fall. We had some weather issues this year that really affected the stand. I also had some weed pressure issues that I fought with a little bit. I'm thinking giant ragweed. This year, when I looked at the numbers, I was able to do my test plot different, so I was able to pull out of it in 3 different spots. So I was trying to balance the numbers game a little better. This year, though, the test plot did not average nearly as high as the rest of the field average did. But this year, it only showed a 3 bushel an acre average, splitting the growers up versus using the 28 in that 2x2 position. This year, 28 was only $2.79 a gallon, so I still saved $22.32 roughly an acre by not putting that 28% on. So what will I do next year? The 28 still is not going to touch the corn planter next year. It won't be planted with that. There again, it might be in a couple of my test plot strips, but the acres that I added for next year, including the custom acres that I'm planting for a neighbor, everybody's already given me the go-ahead. It's getting planted with growers in furrow and growers in the 2x2, and we'll do something different with the nitrogen. As far as applying my 2x2, the growers that way, some guys want to get expensive and fancy. There's some customers out there that are using Precision Plantings conceal system, where they're putting it on both sides of the row. In that system, they're splitting the press wheel and putting a little finger down in the soil So that's how they're injecting it in there. One customer did that last year, cost him $1,700 per row to do it, but he likes the system. In my case, I don't have anything that fancy. My 2x2 is the Yetter 2995 no-till coalers that come on my John Deere 7000 corn planter when I bought it. I don't have any data from one of the customers that I worked with last winter. He set up two-row corn planters, and he put on the Martin UMO 100 series fertilizer coalers that mount right to the front of the row unit itself on the corn planter, in place of the no-till kohler if guys are running that. Because again, he wanted it in the ground and his planter needed something a little different. But we also have a customer that is using totally tubular style apparatuses. He's got two tubes running off the back of his planter, and he's dropping it on top of the soil. So he's putting it in the furrow and on both sides on top of the soil. And he saw enough using those first that's what propelled him into deciding to go to the Precision Plantings Conceal system, because he saw an increase with the tubes putting it on top. Then he decided, well, I think it's better to put it in the soil. So he put the Precisions on. And unfortunately, when he did that, he only had one system left. So we couldn't compare the two systems side by side to see if there was a yield advantage over one versus the other. So. Yep.
Zachy, good job. Really appreciate it. That was excellent. Yep. And run by again what you knife in for 28 then for your total nitrogen application, Zach.
All right. My total application for nitrogen is whatever my applicator puts out. I have not touched the John Blue pump in 4 years. It is putting out roughly 33 or 34 gallons per acre, and I am knifing that in with a knife, no kohler in front of it, and I'm putting it in about 5 or 6 inches deep when I put it on. And generally, I like to wait till the corn is somewhere at least as tall as my boots, but if it gets up closer to knee high, I'm not afraid to wait that long either. Depends on how the weather is looking and the ground conditions.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Hey, Zach, I really appreciate it. These guys will find it very helpful. So I want to go next to Mr. Robert Hubbard and his right-hand man, Peter. And if you guys are out there, Peter, you're going to have to help Bob. I understand he's a little more challenged with the technical things, and if you guys can hop on and talk to us, that would be great. If you're struggling with getting on, we'll move along with David Armstrong, but I'm going to give you a little bit here and see if you guys are available.
Can you hear me, Jim?
Bob? Yes, I can, Bob. Very good. Are you with Peter or are you by yourself?
No, I'm by myself this evening.
That is acceptable, but you tell Peter we definitely want him contributing because we know he's the stable force in that operation. So.
Well, he contributed notes to me this afternoon, so he is involved in the numbers I'm going to give you.
Okay, sounds great, Bob. So you go ahead and you start chatting away, and if you get too lengthy, I'll cut you off.
All right, Jim, thank you. It'll be short. What we did last year, first year we've tried it, we put 3 gallons of growers in furrow with 3 gallons of RO water, and we put 3 gallons of growers in the 2x2 position using RO water. And then we followed that up with 2 gallons per acre with NA as a foliar spray. Our total units of nitrogen on the field per acre is 132 pounds. Previous crop was soybeans, and we did subsoil the field after the soybeans were off. I'm talking about a 60-acre field, all in one field, and we were very pleased with the yield. Right near 200. I didn't weigh bug yet, but we took 100 ton of high moisture corn and then over 8,000 bushels of dry corn off that field. It's right near 200.
So, Bob, can you tell us, did Peter give you the total pounds of nitrogen that you applied, and how did you apply that nitrogen?
We're taking 40 units of credit from the soybean crop, and then we put 200 pounds of 4600 as a broadcast over the top when the corn was right near knee high.
So what is your, when did you first start using growers, Bob? And then I want you to give me your assessment of putting growers in the furrow and at the 2x2, being an in-furrow man for as long as you have.
I started with growers in 1991, and as far as putting it in furrow, we've done that from the very beginning with a couple different planters. The one we've got now is a 9100 white. So we're using two different tanks and two different pumps here to put the in furrow in a different tank and pump to put in the 2x2. The mixtures are exactly the same though.
I got you. So what's your after, and you told me it was a good corn year up there, but what is your appraisal of splitting that growers over to that 2x2 along with your in furrow?
Everybody up here, Jim, it was amazing for central Wisconsin. Everybody had good corn, unlimited amount of rainfall. We were very pleased with what we got on it. I guess I had mentioned to different ones that I believe it was the best corn crop we've had since we started using the growers.
What's your take on adding the water? You know, what we're basically saying is that you're enlarging the area that's being affected by the growers to affect the microbes. Is that water, you know, in your opinion, do you think it's been helpful, or do you think it's something that isn't as necessary? What's your take on the water that you're adding now, both in furrow and 2x2?
Okay, Jim, thank you for that question. I will draw you a picture verbally. My son started to chisel plow before we were done combining, and he uprooted one corn plant with total roots included with that. You know, the stalk was only like 12, 14 inches left after the harvest, but the mass root would have filled a bushel basket.
Yep.
It was just unbelievable to see that much root for one corn stalk, and it was down through the entire field that way. We planted 32,000, and I mentioned to Jim, I think 31,500 probably was the final population.
Bob, I made a mistake with Zach Ulmer, and I want to tell you guys that Zach farms around Attica, Ohio, which is a little bit south of Milan, Ohio, south and west of Milan. Bob, would you tell these guys where you're farming at so they kind of understand where the geography is?
Okay, I'll describe it in a couple of different ways. We're about 3 hours north of Madison, Wisconsin, and we are north central, really. Highway 29 runs from Minneapolis to Green Bay, and we're right near the halfway point there as far as getting between Green Bay and Minneapolis. We're in a heavy soil here. We've been putting on the high calcium line from the very beginning, and I do like the subsoil when conditions are right. And right now we are situated where we're not excessively dry, but we could use moisture. We've had very little snow here this winter. The first snowstorm we had was moved with a broom, and we're hoping to get some moisture here before we plant.
Very good. Bob, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Did an excellent job. I'll have to tell Peter to give you a passing grade. I think you did a fine job.
Well, Peter's the employer now, and I'm the employee, so would you please give me a pat on the back?
That'll be good. Maybe you will keep your salary the same without a decrease.
I would be happy with that. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Bob. So for my third guest, I can put my hand on his shoulder. We've been together here for a couple days. I'm going to introduce David Armstrong, and I'm going to let David just kind of take away with this and kind of give you his version of what he's doing and what he's thinking about. So she's all yours, David.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I would like to start out tonight and just pass my condolences, thoughts, and really pray prayers to the MacGyver family and also to his clientele, which includes his sales staff. David was a great man, and he meant a lot to me. I couldn't grow whiskers when I started with this company hardly, and David MacGyver took me under his wing in quite a few different ways, and a very compassionate man, helped me to learn and taught me how to be who I am today with sales and how to interact and work with people. And that was greatly spoke of at today's ceremony to remember David MacGyver. So with the 2x2 on the March calendar, it shows 2 corn plants with roots growing to the 2x2 position. That's what the example of what we're going to talk about is there on the calendar. That's what's going on there. So what I took in consideration was everything Zach Homer had done as research. And when I heard about the fellow that Jim talked about, the customer that quit his nitrogen application in the 2x2, I become very interested in the results that happened there and found out they were very, very positive. Having a older John Deere planter that I refurbished and rebuilt, it once was a liquid planter, which was okay with me that the 2x2 was taken off of it, and I bought it as a bare frame. And so my wheels started turning after hearing some of these things, Zach and the other gentleman that went away from the nitrogen application of the planter. And so I quickly went and found the 2x2 units similar to the ones that was on the John Deere planter. So I just put the planter back in its original condition. And so building my own system, I just simply continued with the one single electric pump that I had been using, and I split my lines and added another orifice and made my configuration so that my 7 gallons in furrow would now become 4 2x2, 3 in furrow. One of the reasons for my wanting to do such a thing is research done by Matt Gooding. If you recall and didn't see it, well, we'll try to get it to you if you contact the office, but very profounding research that was done was he germinated some wheat seeds on some blotter paper and challenged 1034-0 against the Growers Mineral Solutions, one on one side, one on the other, and he sprouted seeds and had them sprout in the natural way and then placed them in a position in the center and let them decide where they wanted to grow to. And when that production come out, it very quickly explained that there is a great attraction for the plant to want to go to the GMS side. So that told me that I could very productively put a 2x2 position in and split my product and increase my wetting zone, which everyone started talking about that was in the research position. So when I seen that, I actually started to do some consideration to what my program would look like. And with hard water taken into consideration, I deferred to Jim Hallbeisen, and he told me to keep my hard water a little bit less than the growers and go ahead and mix something up that's very similar to a 50-50 mix, such as a 60-40. So I went with that program, split my planter, and went to work. And last year, the 23 season was my first season. Getting into the season, we planted in a normal way. I'm not the early bird planter, but I was not that late either. I was done planting corn by, I believe, the 10th or so along in there of May. Went to work in the usual way and did what I would do, continue planting soybeans, and finished up. Made hay and watched my crop grow. It come up very, very well. I was very pleased with what I did, and I had not applied any nitrogen at this point. We got in a situation where we were having 90-degree days in the month of June, and my soil started drying very quickly, and I was digging roots and very curious about my new program, and I had much enthusiasm to see how this would happen. While the soil dried out so quickly, I started to notice in my root digs that I wasn't getting the movement of my root to the 2x2 position that I was hoping to see. And with nitrogen needing to be put on timely, I grew greatly concerned. So I give my research director, Jim Hallbeisen, a call, and I said, I need some fatherly advice, Jim. And he said, what's your problem, David? And I said, well, here it is. So I told him the story I just told you. And he said, well, he says, I think that if you feel like you're going to get the rain soon, I would go ahead and get that nitrogen rolling on there. He said, are you going to knife it in? And I said, well, I'm not going to knife it, but I've got really nice openers. They're in good shape. And I got an injector, and I'm trying to get it, 4 or 5 inches in the ground. And he said, well, will the nitrogen hit moisture? And I said, yeah, no doubt it will. I've got that much moisture. And he says, well, then go out there and get it done. He says, I'll just give you advice, go get it done. So with that being said, I did that. And probably, I'm going to say, by the time I got that done, we were getting to the end of June, and really good for Poweshiek County, Iowa. We had a 5-inch or a little plus rainfall that come in about a 4-day period prior to the 4th of July. My excitement and enthusiasm become very great, and I started to go out and see how my 2x2 position was working, because I knew that my wetting zone had dried away. Well, failure to do so, take pictures and show you what I saw, lo and behold, my roots had quickly grown into that trench. Now, when you use the John Deere system that I use, it's a disc opener with what John Deere calls a tomahawk, and the opener runs at a slight angle, so the tomahawk is actually opening a trench. So it was easy to find that trench and see the rooting had come there. So I called Jim with great enthusiasm and excitement, and we're going to go right back to Matt Gooding's research when he dehydrated the product and found out that a gallon of dehydrated product would make about 1.75 gallons in containers of crystalline material. So I said to Jim, I said, you know what? It works. The proof is in the pudding. We not only seen it in the laboratory, I seen it in the field, because we rehydrated what had dehydrated, and my roots grew right into that zone. So I have no numbers for yield other than I can tell you my yields in corn this year for whole yield averages was done by crop insurance, not because I needed the crop insurance recovery, but because I buy crop insurance. And to validate my honesty, I just turn in a claim every year, and I let them come measure what I produce. And I went from all the way from 173 bushel the acre in particular fields. I have multiple fields to 216 bushel the acre proven over the whole field, but my test plot was anywhere from 209 to 238 this year. Very, very happy with productivity. I will go on to say that my nitrogen input is 32%, and I run about 35 gallons an acre, should give me 130 to 40 units. I figure I'm like Zach, and I got a pressure gauge, and it's a little here and it's a little there. So I go by my field size, the amount of gallons I use, and that's how I calculate what I'm getting on. I do it just like any other farmer. We guess in Magali if we have to, but we're out there to get the job done.
Thank you, David. Nice job. Nice job. You guys all did a great job. I appreciate it. We're getting to the end of the call here. I just text Marty Whitson, and I can't raise Marty. So I'm going to deliver the message that Marty delivered to me early in the week. The gentleman that we wrote the Peach article about, Jim Seiler, told Marty Sunday night, Monday night, it looks like this warm weather we're going to pay for. There's a very strong cold front. If you guys noticed on your weather channels, they had significant snowfall in Denver yesterday and today. And so that cold front is going to be sweeping down. And Jim is telling Marty that this weekend, 2 gallons to the acre is going on those peaches. He said he was trimming last week. The blooms are wide open. He said they are going to be very susceptible. And Jim's saying in his area, they're looking at 26 degrees or possibly 24 degrees. And
I did make it on here, Jim, if you can hear me.
Hey, Marty, good deal, good deal. Deliver the message for us that Jim's got for the guys, so the guys can get their teasters in gear, and our guys that need some help will get that material out there to them. So give them the word, Marty.
Well, I talked to him this afternoon because I wanted to get the official answer. I asked him what temperature would be the cutoff limit in normal societies right now with the stage that the blossoms are in. And he said 26 is it. He said if it gets down there for an hour or more at 26 at this stage of the game, they would be toast. And with calm winds that they're talking about having, he expects to see 24, maybe 23 in the low areas in the valleys. But he said he'll put that 2 gallon on and go to bed and sleep quite comfortably.
So Marty, kind of explain to these guys your location and then Jim's location so that they can kind of measure that and have an idea of what they're looking at.
I'm about 30 miles north of where Jim is. He is just a stone's throw away from the Ohio River. He would be just a little bit southwest of Louisville. I'm almost directly west of Louisville. He's a little bit further south than me. But that would line up then just about with St. Louis if you go straight west from us. So anybody in the mid Illinois and further north probably going to be looking at being susceptible on this go around.
So Marty, if Jim was to give advice to guys that want to protect their bloom set, what about the timing on the grower spray? A couple days ahead? How about the day of the frost issue? What would be what they would try to do, and what can they live with if they can't quite get the product quick enough?
Mr. Seiler has done both. He's done it a couple days in advance, and he's done it the afternoon before the bottom falls out. And he seems to think as long as you get it on there, you'll be helping yourself regardless. But I don't know that it's like everything else. There's no cut and dried answer to all those things. I'm sure Mother Nature would have her version of which way is better and the timing and all that. There's always going to be variables involved, but all I know is he's very happy with it. That's all he can say. Even with the meetings that you'd have explaining all the biologicals and how those things are working in the soils and how growers works and all, Jim's, as you say, one of those guys that has the grower's gene, and he pretty much says, I don't give a crap. It works. That's all I need to know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitson. I appreciate it. You came on just in the right nick of time. So,
Just
Zach
barely.
Smith, we're gonna turn it back to you, and you can make any announcements you need to make, and we'll shut this thing down so these guys don't lose their beauty sleep.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks everybody for listening in. Our next call will be on April 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and a reminder that that will be our final call until September. So we no longer have these calls for the months of May, June, July, and August. Thanks everybody for listening, and for the guests for coming on. Have a good night.